On the morning of January 15th, 1947, 27-year-old Betty Bersinger found the bisected body of Elizabeth Short in a vacant lot at Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California. Betty has said she thought she was looking at a discarded store mannequin. When she got closer, she noticed the body was extremely pale, like if the body wasn't real. That's because the body was drained of all its blood and washed inside, leaving no traces of blood at the crime scene. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bubonic Morgue. My name is Miggy, and in today's video, we're going to go over the true crime case of the Black Dahlia. I believe I was in middle school when I first heard about this or realized what this was as I was growing up, and your mind just kind of gets open to the world. And a friend of mine, we're in the computer class, and he was just like, "Hey, come here real quick." And he just showed me those photos, and I was just like, "What is this?" And he told me what it was, and seeing those photos, I immediately got sick, and I didn't even eat my lunch for the rest of the day. I just, like, my mind was just on the photos the whole time. I got home, I think maybe a day or two later, I told my mom about it, and she talked about it, and then I got sick again. And so, but then growing up, I would watch shows like America's Most Wanted. I would watch Cops whenever they would respond. I don't think Cops showed anything of like murder caliber, more just arresting. But in terms of just like real life scenarios, I was always watching it. And then the Mexican news would always show uncensored videos and photos, and sometimes you just watch bodies just on the streets and blood, and it was just a different thing for a Mexican news anchor, especially when I was visit Mexico. That was a different story. But anyways, let's get back to the video and talk about Elizabeth Short's case. Elizabeth Short was born July 29th, 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts. Relocated with her father at the age of 18 in 1942 to Vallejo, California. From there, she worked at the base exchange at Camp Coke near Lompoc, California. She lived with an Air Force sergeant who would abuse her from time to time, so she left him and moved to Santa Barbara. She was arrested September 23rd for drinking underage, where this mugshot was taken of her. Again, no shade towards her at all. I'm just saying that if you go across and you like research this mugshot or this photo, just understand that it's just she was arrested for drinking underage. And I'm like, who hasn't been arrested for drinking underage? I remember one time we were like 19 or 20. We were drinking at a park. Cop rolled up and he's like, "Hey, how you guys?" It's like 4 or 5 of us, by the way, walking at 11 o'clock at night, and he could tell we weren't minors, but we weren't of drinking age. We were all gone, and I guess one person was sober, and he was talking to the cop, and so we almost got arrested. But I've always ran into that issue, so what are you gonna do? Then in July 1946, she relocated again to Los Angeles, California, spent some time in Southern California, but mostly in LA before her death. She worked as a waitress in LA, and the people around her depicted her as a would be actress. She did have some aspirations to become a movie star, people would say. Anyone at that time would want to become a movie star. It was in the middle of the golden age of Hollywood cinema. I'm sure she saw some famous actors and actresses. Even though there was no reports of her acting or anything like that, it's not hard to believe, being around the golden age of Hollywood, you would want to become an actor. Going back to Hollywood, there are some things before her death, but I'm going to get to that in the suspect area. I kind of want to just keep it like there's a reason before that. There are some accounts of like her whereabouts before her death, but I'm going to save that towards the suspect part and like how that kind of plays a role into like her disappearance and then eventually the finding of her body. Discovery of the body. When the police found the body of Elizabeth Short, they found it in the most brutal way possible. If you look up these photos for yourself, your discretion is advised. They're extremely graphic. When they found her body, they found her cut at the waist, drained of blood. Lacerations on the side of her face, where roughly 3 inches were cut into the side of her smile, giving her the glass glow smile. Multiple bruising all over her body, pieces of flesh missing. The cause of death would be determined to be a hemorrhage from all the lacerations and blows to the face. And to say it again, there was no blood at the scene at all. So whoever have done this, they literally had to be trained to do this or have a facility to do all this stuff. Facilities that do that, I'm pretty sure hospitals don't do that. But there's so much people in a hospital, it would be hard to get away with that. Morticians, stuff like people like that would have access to this, so it would be there'd be no like suspicion if they're just doing work on a body or basically bisecting a body, or they would have to be in that setting. Doctors and morticians, they have that access. So it just raises more suspicion. We will get to that during the suspect part of this video. I could not imagine like how it would felt when Betty just walked up to the scene and just seeing that for the first time. Let alone like just seeing it online the first time seeing it is just horrific. Imagine seeing it in person and then poor Elizabeth just having to go through this. I wish, maybe she was already gone when that part like just get, it's just horrible. The name Black Dahlia was made up for the news press at the time because there was a film called The Blue Dahlia. That movie was a thriller released in 1946. Labeled as a noir film, noir films are just basically black and white Hollywood crime style films. And since this horrible murder took place in Los Angeles, tabloids are always coming up with the names for breaking news, and thus the names Black Dahlia was born. The reason they gave her that name was for her pale skin, and as the newspaper stated, all the black clothes she would wear. Reports say that. There's a report that says she was alive when they gave her that name, but I couldn't be 100% sure of that. But maybe that's just a rumor. And then look at this newspaper poster. Like reading that for the first time, and then reading how she was found. And for the time back then in the 1940s, I'm pretty sure people were in a frenzy, and like I guess this gave birth to like the serial killer epidemic in Los Angeles. It wouldn't be for like another 40 to 30 years, anyways. But somehow, you could kind of say this kicked us off. Suspects. Now, who could have done this and why? The police were able to round up a few suspects. One of them was Robert Red Manley. Reason why he was a suspect, you ask? Well, he was the last to see Elizabeth alive on January 9th, 1947. It is said that Elizabeth was dating Robert, a married salesman. So being that he was the last person to see her alive, the police were quick to arrest him, but released him after passing a polygraph test and having a solid alibi. I mean, if you're the police and you're finding this, you kind of have to make arrests quickly so the killer doesn't get away. That is another foreshadowing for later in this video. But I would imagine like why you just kind of be like, hey, you come with me. Were there any witnesses? Yada yada yada. I can see why they arrested him. He was the last person to see Elizabeth alive. Reports also say that Elizabeth was using the lobby telephone at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Short was then seen at the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge, less than a mile away from where Manley dropped her off. Since the police ruled him out, they turned their attention to Leslie Dillon. Dillon was another suspect in the case. When researching this, I was like, I found out that he willingly wrote to the LAPD, like, what are you doing? But then again, it's like, there's more stuff in this case that I'm just like, more people also confess to it. I'll get to that part later, the numbers to it. But I can only imagine, like, okay, you're mocking the LAPD. But it's also stated that he basically had a split personality. Leslie Dillon would write to psychiatrist Dr. J. Paul DeRiver. Dillon wrote under the pseudonym as Jack Sand. He wrote that a man named Jeff Connors was the one who had murdered Short, which was a lie. The thing about Leslie during questioning is he would talk about details about the case that weren't released to the public. He was saying information that only the killer would know, or if he was a direct witness. Again, the more I talk about this case, the weirder it gets, because it's like, why would you, if you're the killer, why would you taunt the LAPD? But then the Zodiac killer did that, so it's like he was trying to play a game, but he wasn't the killer because he was using an alias, and I felt like he just wanted to be like known, or some, people back then, people now kind of want to be tied to serial killers for whatever the hell reason. But that's kind of wild. But I'm just like, he did, the psychiatrist saying like, he kind of did have a split personality again, but he also was a mortician assistant. So that's why he was a suspect, again, because he had the skills to learn how to bisect the body, dissect the body, everything like that, and he had access to it. For whatever reason, like after, the initial investigation, people, like over 60 people confessed, and over 500 people, have, like over time, have confessed to become the killer. Some people weren't even being born yet saying they were the killer. Like, who would want to be tied to that? Why would you want to be like, yeah, I did that. That was me. What's up? Like, who does that? Also, shortly after the news broke on January 24th, 1947, a package was sent to the Los Angeles Examiner. The letter was written with cutout letters from newspaper and magazines, and said this is Dahlia's belongings with letter to follow. What was sent was Short's birth certificate, business cards, some photographs, and her personal address book with missing pages. Forensics said all the items, including the envelope, had been cleaned with gasoline to remove fingerprints, matching the way the victims' bodies had been washed. So whoever did that obviously was the killer, or obviously knew someone who killed her and was just playing like, hey, because more than one person had to be involved. Because if you look at it, like if you have access to, like you can pick up, a body if the person small enough, and Elizabeth was, you would have to have access. You would have to have, I wouldn't say help, but at least one more person to do this type of thing, and to get away with it. So in my head, this is my guess. Dylan was kind of maybe a part of it. There's one more person. If you know about the case, you already know it's Dr. Hoddle. We'll get to that in a moment. Now, the prime suspect for the Dahlia murder in 1947 was Dr. George Hoddle. Hoddle became a suspect for many reasons. Investigators at the crime scene noted that a black car similar to Hoddle's 1936 Packard was seen near the empty lot. Another creepy coincidence is that he also possessed knowledge to perform bisection, and he knew how to use the tools like Leslie Dillon. Multiple reports state that Hoddle and Short were seen together, suggesting they had a romantic relationship, but there's no official accounts of it. Maybe people just like to talk. Since he was the prime suspect in the case, LAPD and District Attorney bugged Hoddle's house for 40 days. In those 40 days, some disturbing audio was captured. One of the recordings read, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she is dead." Like, I know that isn't considered a mission of guilt. It is pretty weird to say. The dead secretary refers to as Ruth Spaulding, who died of a drug overdose in 1945. Ruth Spaulding was found dead in her apartment by Dr. Hoddle. He found her in a comatose state, and instead of calling 911 right away, he calls his wife. He calls his wife so she can start burning papers that Ruth had written down. It is speculated to be documents of his criminal misconduct of Dr. Hoddle. Official ruling of Ruth's death was death by suicide, but I find it extremely weird that he showed up when she died and immediately started to burn paperwork and files about himself. They were reported to be lovers, so he had access to her apartment. Also in those tapes, on February 18, 1950, there were sounds of a woman screaming in the basement. Right after that, someone in the house was talking about calling the hospital. Police were monitoring the situation but did not intervene at the time. So there's that. Just some weird, creepy stuff on those tapes in 1950. I think him and Dylan probably did have something to do with it because, like, who jokes like that? Especially at that time. Who jokes like that? And those two had access to those type of, equipment and facilities. My head is like that. And, Dr. Hoddle was just basically a horrible human being. And it's like, and if you're burning evidence or getting rid of it, don't quote me. But I'm pretty sure people like that who try to cover up evidence and try to, get rid of it, keep doing it until they get caught. And I believe sometime after this, he leaves. He leaves the country, and he comes back, and he's reunited with his son, Steve Hoddle. So that's another video for another day. I'm just kind of giving you the timeline of the suspects and what happens here. Also, if you hear sounds, there's just maintenance around the house. I just gotta get this video out before, because I keep putting it off. Not putting it off, but I just gotta get this video out. It's been a long time coming. He was also arrested and charged for a horrific crime in 1949. The victim was his 14-year-old daughter, Tamar. Tamar accused him of SM and R. I'm not saying that on YouTube. George Hoddle was acquitted after a 3-week trial. George had hired a high-profile attorney, Jerry Gleiser. Despite having 3 witnesses saying that they saw George do this horrible act, he was let free. Conclusion. Just after 3 years of investigation, the case was ruled a cold case. The case has still remained open to this day. The FBI says the case will most likely never be solved due to too much time that has passed. Also, a little horrible fun fact. The LAPD states that most of the physical evidence and most of the original documents from the Black Dahlia case have disappeared. Like, you're just gone. So there's that. So it's just like, there's more the corruption in this case as well. I just couldn't get to the LAPD part. I mean, corruption is everywhere, but I believe they let George off the hook a little bit easier, and Dylan. Because it's like, can you imagine, like, if someone's saying, I did it, like, right after that, and playing with you, trying to mess with you and had that skill, having a split personality doesn't really let you off the hook because maybe he did it. And then with George, it's like there wasn't enough evidence to just arrest him. I understand that they were probably limited back then. As the anniversary of Elizabeth's death comes around, January 15th, it will be 79 years that since she was murdered. And Elizabeth was just a young, beautiful person who came to LA and just had a horrible situation happen to her. And people won't forget because this is the most gruesome murder in Hollywood, cold case. It's infamous in Los Angeles, California. The story of the Black Dahlia is a very gruesome story. If you do find yourself looking into this case and trying to get more details, because I didn't leave a lot out of it. I just kind of give you the meat and potatoes of this case, but it is gruesome. If you do look at the photos again, viewer discretion is advised for this. um if I said some misinformation, this is my first attempt at true crime. I do apologize. Please leave comments and leave comments down below. Let me know what I missed. I am gonna move forward with more true crime. I will do movie reviews in the future. I just saw it Together, and I'm just like, man, that I actually really like that movie. I mean, I understand maybe there's some controversy with that movie and the story being written, but I actually really like that movie. So I'll probably review that in the next episode. I don't know if I'm gonna keep moving both or moving one under one channel, making a separate one for true crime. We're gonna see about it. But for now, I'm putting it under the bubonic morgue, and yeah, this is my findings of the Black Dahlia case. Let me know what cases you would like me to do next. Let me know for any room for improvement. But yeah, my name is Miggy. This is Bubonic Morgue. Please like, comment, subscribe to this channel as we're gonna keep moving along with movie reviews and true crime and paranormal stories. I think the next one I'm gonna do some paranormal stuff. That's always fun. But anyways, I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.